What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Comically Boston Breakdown episode. I'm your host, Big Cam, and today we are talking about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 5, titled Feel Her Love. And we will be breaking down everything that happened in this episode and talking about all those juicy details and the connections to the game. And I hope you guys have been joining me on this series and breakdown series. It has been a lot of fun. This show has been so good, and we're only 5 weeks in. We got 2 weeks remaining. It sucks that there's only 7 episodes this season, but yeah. And by the end of this episode, we'll speculate what episode 6 will be about. But coming off of last week and everything that went down, it seems that we will be getting our welcome to Seattle and really experiencing what Seattle has to offer this episode, and Seattle's a dangerous place. Most of the time we've been walking by, we've been seeing a lot of dead bodies. Last episode we experienced a few alive ones, but mostly infected and dead ones. So this episode we get to experience a little bit more of the wolves and the scars and what's going on here in Seattle. And, it's not good here. But at this point in the game, Ellie was not happy when she found out that Dina was pregnant and calls her a burden, and went to make sure that the theater was empty and by herself, leaving Dina there. Like, she gets told she's pregnant and just goes like, you stay here, I'll make sure we're empty. We're in the game, or in the show, they kind of like hook up and they stay together all night right there, and then she does this check to make sure they're alone the following morning, which feels more dangerous, but still we get to the beats from the game the next morning, where most of that still is night one, you know what I mean? Like, that interaction. So in the game, Ellie goes into the theater, which is a big location for later, and this theater is going to be a big location for the rest of the season, and maybe even into season 3, but depending on where episode 7 leaves us. But she finds a guitar in a guitar case and starts to play by herself, and she does a couple strings of Future Days, and then like kind of puts her face down on the guitar, and we cut to a flashback where Joel is teaching her to swim, which is a big thing in the game, and he takes her to a museum, and we get this whole flashback, which we will most likely see in live action next episode. But coming off of Ellie taking a bite for Dina, and Dina finding out that, Ellie's immune, and finding out that Dina's pregnant, and then they hook up, and then we get the I'm gonna be a dad moment from Ellie, which a lot of people were like, that's so gay, this is the dumbest show ever, and like just finding anything to hate on a reason, where I thought that was a sweet little change from the game to the show, that like, in the game she was pissed, in the show she's kind of excited, she's like, I'm gonna be a dad, I'm gonna be with Dina, we're gonna have this kid, like, they're the couple, like they're together and they're strong together. They're not like fighting, The last episode ended with a explosion happening, and they went up to the roof, and Dina says they go together and they're holding hands, and that's the closing shots of last week's episode. We open this week on Isaac's right-hand wolf captain, that woman we saw him joining last week, and turning on the Fedra soldiers. That same woman is now his like captain, or whatever the term is, lieutenant, whatever. She's like the leader under him, but she's seeing what's going on, and they're at the hospital, and we see that they have a door completely sealed off and like welded shut, and metal like bracing it. Like, what is behind this door? I was thinking about from the game, is this the Rat King, or is it just like a big horde? But either way, this woman then goes to question her sergeant, Sergeant Park, whose job it was to secure the hospital, when we hear that this hospital was the first location where the first infected were brought to back in 03. So infected have been here for a long time. But we also hear that this Sergeant Park sent 2 squads down to the lower floors, B1, where no one was, and B2, where no one came back from. And then there's also B3, which nobody knows what's there, and maybe Abby will find out next season, or maybe episode 7. I doubt this season. I think that's a next season type of thing. So this woman sent 2 squads down to the lower floors, and they all died, and she sent her son down there, and he said that the infection is in the air. And so spores, and introducing spores for us this episode, and they had to seal everyone in. So her son was one of the people that she had to seal into the spores and sacrifice her own kid to save the rest of the community. So the opposite of Joel, you know, where he's saving his daughter at any cost from the first game, like she sacrifices her son for the rest of the community. Very interesting, you know. And then the intro happens. That beautiful oh, Gustavo, legend. But we then cut to Seattle day 2, and Dina is figuring out the radio, which is also from the game, and the map, and triangulating location, and Ellie gets the power back on, which is also from the game, but she says it comes from downstairs, which in the game, they get the power back on from the roof, which is like this whole thing. A guy gets the guy that was living in this theater got electrocuted and died on the roof, and it's like raining. Seattle rains all the time. Are you from Seattle in real life? How often does it really rain in Seattle? I mean, from a Boston guy, I don't know a whole lot about that complete other side of the coast. If you're from Seattle, comment, what's up, you know? What's the weather like out there? Is the Seattle Space Needle cool? You know, comment below. I'd love to know what Seattle like. We then see Ellie ask Dina if she's found a safe way to get to the hospital. And I at first was like, wait, why does she want to get to the hospital? And she wants to get there because that's where Nora is. And why does she want Nora? Nora, right, because you thought she was hunting Abby down. No. She wants to get Nora because Nora was one of the people in The One that restrained Ellie and made her watch Joel's death, right? Like, she could have dragged her out of the room. She could have knocked her out before. You know, like, she held her down and made her watch Joel get stabbed to death and beaten to death by a golf club. So Dina's trying to triangulate their location by the radio and, you know, trying to chart their patrol routes. And Ellie says, you're smart as fuck, so I'm going to leave you to figure this out, and I'm going to go explore this place. And they exchange this, like, cute look, and it's like, oh, they're like, this look of just love. They don't say anything, but it's just like this look of like, hey, I love you, be safe. You know, like, they're at a much better place than they are in the game at this point. But Isabella Merced is looking so good in that little, tied her hair up. Man, just such a beautiful woman. But the look she gives Ellie is so very cute.
Ellie. Yes?
Oh God, Isabella Merced, melt my soul. If she ever looked at me like that, I would just turn into a puddle. Just a puddle at my feet, just puddle of eyeballs, just like, somebody pour me into a popsicle tin or something, I'll freeze back up. I'd be like Gumby around, you know, like I just have these jello limbs, I'd just be like, hi! You know, like, just be all fucking, all arms and just, oh God, Isabella Merced, oh God, just revert into like Play-Doh. So this is then where we get to see Ellie go into the theater to see if they're alone, and she, you know, scopes out the place, and she sees band equipment on stage because there wasn't just a movie playing here like there was in the game. There was a performance from Sick Habits or something Habits, some Sick Habits, I think. That, you know, so their equipment, their music equipment, and their instruments are all left on stage. So Ellie walks over and picks up one of the guitars, and then she sits down on a stool in the middle of the stage, and she starts to sing Future Days, which is a song we have not heard yet. And she starts singing by saying, if I ever were to lose you. And then she stops and gets angry, and we just hear this kind of, you know, like almost kind of like Anakin's Force. Like we hear just the, you know, like the bassy, like, and you know, she stops and she just gets angry, and then like goes to put the guitar down, and as soon as she was like, if I ever were to lose you, and she just gets angry, I was like, I'd probably lose myself, you know, just tears. Oh God, what a moment from the game. But the clip of this, you know, and hearing the anger.
If I ever were to lose you.
Oof, you know, like that anger reverts inwards as she's like having this memory of Joel, and she's like, if I ever were to lose you. And then she remembers that she did lose him, and it's almost like she can't finish the words because she's probably going to lose herself. Oh, my chest. But as Ellie, you know, puts down the guitar, Dina walks in and Ellie's like, "Did you figure it out?" And she goes, "I think so." And Ellie just says, "Good," with this like angry Ellie face. And angry Ellie is ready to finish her mission. So it's time to head out and find Abby. Or, in this case, Nora. So then Dina breaks down the patrol routes for Ellie, and Dina compares the scars to the Amish because the wolves talk on the radio like nobody's listening. And if the scars are like the Amish, they're, you know, not using technology type of thing, and, you know, fighting with bows and arrows and bolt action rifles and sticks and axes, where they're fighting with pistols and machine guns and, you know, Humvees and all types of stuff. You know, like, so comparing the scars to the Amish aren't, you know, too far off there. But so Dina's got all this information on them, and there's this big empty building that nobody's patrolling, and they could sneak through to get to the hospital, but why aren't they patrolling this big building? And Dina thinks maybe infected, or maybe, you know, something else, but, you know, it would be risky and reckless, but she knows Nora's in the hospital, and Ellie's like, "Let's go be reckless." So they head out, and they go out, and Dina says, "Let's just keep talking to distract me from being anxious, or I'll throw up again," right? Because Dina is still freaking pregnant. And Ellie says, "Okay, what are you gonna name it?" So to distract her, it doesn't say what are you going to name him or her or the baby. It just says, what are you going to name it? Dina says, if it's a girl, Ellie. If it's a boy, Elijah. So she's going to name it after Ellie, which is cute. And Ellie's like, really? And she's like kidding. But Ellie was like, I like that name. I think she means Elijah. But, you know, if it's a girl, she's like, Ellie Jr.? Little EJ? They then come across a bunch of dead scars on the ground that have just been wiped out by the wolves, clearly, and blood everywhere, but just dead bodies. And Ellie is like, what the fuck was I thinking? You're having a baby. Dina, do you want to go back? But Dina doesn't answer her and just kind of ignores this question, and then asks her, you never asked me who the first person I killed was, when, you know, this was the question she asked Ellie a couple episodes back, and she goes, the first one's too fucked up, I'll give you the second. And she didn't want to tell her about Riley, but she told her about saving Joel. And Dina starts to tell her sad story about her mom and sister that got beat to death by a raider when she snuck out of the house, and Dina came back and, you know, saw the guy. So it's like, and she was 8 and like had to shoot the guy, and, you know, 8 years old was when she first killed somebody, and she killed this guy and then was left there with no mother, no father, and a dead body that she just, or no mother, no sister, never really talked about her father, but this dead raider, you know what I mean? Like, so how did she make it to Jackson? We don't know, but Dina's backstory got a little bit more interesting here. I don't remember ever hearing about this back in the day, you know, like, or from the game. But Dina says, I don't know what Joel did for them to want to come after him, but he didn't deserve that. So Dina doesn't know what Joel did. Interesting. But Dina says, I promise you, if that guy that had beaten her mother and sister had gotten away, I would have hunted him down forever. You know, saying all this to say she knows why Ellie is going after these guys. Dina says, I'll go back if you want, and I'll keep going if you want. If I die, that's on me, but what do you want to do? And Ellie says, keep going. But I have a clip of this whole thing, and Isabella Merced absolutely crushes this whole statement.
You know, you never asked me about the first person I killed. And I would get so bored cooped up with my mom and sister, I would just beg them, just let me play outside. But one day I just fucking did. And I had a gun, so who's gonna fuck with me? Now, you already know how this story ends, because I don't live in a cabin north of Santa Fe anymore. And I don't have a mom or sister anymore. I heard them screaming, and I ran back with my gun out, but I was too slow because I was fucking 8. And when he heard me, he turned around, and he looked really startled. And when I shot him, he looked more startled.
Fuck, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought, how did you get to Jackson?
Doesn't matter. Whatever reason Joel gave those people to do what they did, he didn't deserve that. What if I hadn't snuck out? What if my mom and sister were beaten to death in front of me? What if that motherfucker made me watch as he did it? And if I hadn't killed him? If he had gotten away, I promise you, I would have hunted him down forever.
Oof! Isabella Merced! Give her the Emmy! That monologue was, oh, perfect. And then Ellie, like, touches her face at the end, like, God, I'm so sorry you had to go through that type of shit. But, whew, that look on Isabella Merced's face of anger and seriousness and sadness, but also like resolve. Like, listen, I know what happened to me was fucked up, and reliving this memory and talking about it is also fucked up. But I'm a strong ass woman, and so are you. Are we going, or are we good turning back? And Ellie's like, all right, let's keep going. So they keep on going. So now nightfall, and Ellie and Dina are sneaking into that big building trying to make their way to the hospital. And they sneak in, they get in, and they're like avoiding spotlights and stuff. And Dina says 2 positives. The searchlights are up high, so they have no line of sight to the inside. And 2, that door over there is open and nobody ran out to kill us yet. And, and Ellie's like, yet. So Dina goes, I'll go check it out. And Ellie's like, yeah, right, because you're the one that can't get infected here. So Ellie goes and checks it out. And Dina's like, so how is it? And Ellie says, haunted but empty. And Dina just goes, ah, like us. Oh, just like us, haunted and empty. Like her little face. I tried to get a clip of this, but it wouldn't let me download it. Oh my god, one of the funniest lines of this episode made me laugh so hard. Made me genuinely laugh out loud. Like, oh, I love Isabella Merced. Dina's so funny. But Dina says there is no way the entire place is empty. Probably not hordes, but clickers, maybe a few strays. I think we can handle it. But Dina says shooting should be a last resort. Gunfire will have wolves up their ass. And Ellie's like, okay, last resort. What, you think I'm gonna shoot first? And Dina's like, literally every time you shoot first. Which reminds me of the game where you could play The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 tiptoeing by everybody, right? Like, you do not have to kill anybody in The Last of Us. But most of us, just shoot first, ask questions later, just keep it moving, you know what I mean? Dina says Ellie likes to shoot first always because she's crazy, but hey, don't get mad. That's exciting. It's one of the reasons Dina loves Ellie. And Ellie's like, you love me? And Dina just kind of smiles at her, and Ellie goes to say it back, and Dina just says, oh, I know.
Don't get angry. You're a little crazy, and that's exciting. That's one of the reasons I love you. But I do want to make it out of here. You love me? Oh, I know.
Oh, it's almost like Ellie was gonna go, I really love you back. Oh, I know you love me back, don't you worry. But so they go on and they stumble across a half-eaten person, and Dina sees a stalker, and just one. And Dina now didn't see that stalker in the grocery store earlier in the season that bit Ellie, that Ellie had to hide. Ellie ends up telling her that she got bit earlier in the year. You got bit when that happened? She goes, what was I gonna do? Tell you then? You didn't know I was infected. You're immune, you know what I mean? Like, she would have killed her. So Dina sees the stalker, and then Ellie's plan is to split up and flank it, because that's what it's gonna do to us. So let's flank it before it flanks us. So they go to, take another peek, and the one stalker there was now is 3 stalkers. And then they look in a different direction, and then it's 5. And then they look in a different, and now there's 11 stalkers, and they're a little bit outnumbered. And yeah, so Ellie tells Dina, listen, you're gonna have to break for it. I'll distract them. You go to that caged in area and lock yourself in. I can get bit. Don't worry about me. She can still get ripped apart and killed, but she can't get infected by these guys. So Ellie sacrifices herself yet again for Dina, using this immunity as like her superpower almost. So Dina runs and locks herself in, and she starts like shooting at some of the stalkers that are coming after her, and poor Isabella Merced's face on the inside of this cage is so like, ah, Jesus Christ, like there's no acting going on there. Like, there's pure fear of this infected that is on top of this cage closing in on her, and they start to like break into the cage, and we start to hear shotgun rounds, and a mystery man starts killing these stalkers, and the shotgun rounds are going off, and Ellie's just like looking at this guy and can't make out who he is, and it's almost as if Joel's ghost is the one that saves them. But we find out who the mystery man actually is, and it's Jesse.
If we run, they're gonna chase, so we have to go slow. You see that fencing over there? I'm gonna lure as many as I can. You're gonna run in there, secure the gate, secure however you can, and stay in there. Dina, I can get bit a lot. You can't. Do as I say. Go!
Oof. Oof, that little kiss that Ellie gives her, like, run, bitch! I'm gonna try and save you! You know, they're on the fence, and Ellie's trying to distract them, and oh god, what a terrifying sight. But oh, what a terrifying sight where, like, they peek back, and there's just, like, several of these stalkers, which are supposed to be the smart ones. Like Ellie had struggled with one. Now there's several, like 11 of them, like, nutty stuff. But we then see who saves Ellie and Dina.
Did you get bit?
What? No. She's okay. I was watching. They didn't bite her. Jesse, I swear.
We gotta go.
So Jesse comes in, he's like, did you get bit? You know, and like she's looking at the like reflection of him, and she's like, Joel? You know, she's almost looking at him like, what the fuck? And then we see Jesse is in Seattle and had followed them, it seems. We'll find out why he's actually here in a moment. But they end up bolting for it, and wolves are after him, shooting at him and shit. And Dina had to cover for Ellie, and she was like, you know, like, she didn't get bit, I saw. Come on, Jesse, I swear, you know. And it's like, oh boy, that didn't sound very convincing, Dina, but all right. So they all run for it, and they go and run into the park, and they're all now together in the park, but the wolves don't follow because this must be Scar territory, which we know from the games, but they don't know that yet, Ellie, Jesse, and Dina. So Ellie, you know, goes to talk to Jesse like, yo, how the fuck do you know where we were? And they said the map you left in the theater. She goes, how'd you know where the theater was? And he goes, do I look like I want to talk to you right fucking now? And oh, she kind of like gets stunned for a second, and Jesse's pissed because they left and they had to come after her to save her. And Ellie's pissed that she needed him to save her and Dina. And Dina asked, did you come alone? And he says, no. Jesse and Tommy came together, but they split up when they got to Seattle. So that's how we get Tommy and Jesse's storylines in Seattle from the game, which is now interesting, and I'm glad that they are in Seattle for the show.
Map you left in the theater. Impressive triangulation, by the way.
Thanks, that was old Dina.
Trust me, I didn't think it was you.
How did you find the theater?
Do I look like I want to fucking talk to you right now?
You came alone?
No. Me and Tommy. We split up when we got to the city. Covered more ground.
I can't believe they sent you after us.
They didn't. But you two were gonna die out here. So we snuck out the next night. It's a good thing we did.
You know what, we're doing pretty fucking good up
until what?
Till we weren't.
Is Tommy okay?
Hopefully. We're supposed to rendezvous in the morning.
And Jesse says the two of them snuck out themselves without permission because they were going to get themselves killed, right? So they came to save Dina and Ellie and didn't ask Maria or anybody permission. So Tommy and Jesse are out here kind of on their own too. But Ellie's like, we were doing just fine until, and Jesse's like, until, and she's like, until we weren't. You know, so Ellie's pissed and Jesse's pissed because Jesse had to save them, and Ellie's pissed that she needed him to save them, you know what I mean? Like, oh, so like the masculinity between the two of them and like the love triangle between the three of them and Dina, ooh. But then Jesse tells them that they have a new mission, and this is to find Tommy and go home. And Ellie's like, no, and Dina's like, listen, like, come on, like, we should go home. That was crazy. We almost died back there. And also she's now really pregnant, and she's so glad to see Jesse, but she's also like, I need to protect Ellie at all costs. And Ellie's now the one that's been protecting Dina with, you know, taking bites and shit. And so Ellie wants to stay to finish Abby, but they hear Scar whistling and they hide. And the Scars they see are hanging a wolf in the middle of the woods and having this weird kind of cult ceremony. And we hear the other Scar zealots saying all together, "Feel her love," which is the title of the episode, but also one of the Scars' prophets' sayings. And, you know, we see it written all over the place in the game with like a mural of their prophet, and it says, "Feel her love." And we never really see or hear from the prophet in the game herself. Like, she's already dead by the time we get there. So I'm wondering if maybe we get some flashbacks of like the prophet alive in the show. Maybe not this season, but maybe next season, as we explore more of the wolf in the Scar's relationship through Abby, which I'm guessing this season ends with Abby just showing up at the theater at the very end of this season, and then the start of season 3 would be Abby's first 3 days in Seattle, you know what I mean? And we'll see her perspective like we do in the game, rather than we've seen pretty much only Ellie's perspective through most of this season since Joel's death. Like, we haven't seen Abby again. We just saw one of her members for the first time this episode with Nora, you know what I mean? But so the scars are hanging this guy, and they spill his guts all over the ground, cutting his guts open, and just, terrible. Like, but this is like their cult tradition, like their ritual, like it's crazy. But we see, you know, actually it happening to the same thing that happened to those people that were hanging in the TV station by the scars, you know, like they hang him and they make him stand on a bucket for a second, you know, so he doesn't just hang to death, and then they kill you while you're hanging and then kick the bucket out so that there is no chance of you surviving. You just hang to death. And this is like their way of sending you back to the prophet, and you will feel her love, and oh god, it's creepy cult shit. But then we hear another whistle out of nowhere, one of those emergency whistles, and Dina gets hit in the leg with an arrow out of nowhere, which is kind of what happens in the game, but Ellie gets hit by an arrow out of nowhere, and then you gotta fight these scars off. But it's kind of interesting that Jesse and Dina are here at this moment. Dina gets hit in the leg, so now there's got a pregnant woman with an arrow in the leg, and Dina's like, ah shit! And Jesse's got to carry Dina out of there, and Ellie says she will distract them and leads them away, and Jesse and Dina hopefully go back to the theater, but we don't know what happens to Jesse and Dina after this moment. We just know that Ellie runs off and distracts them and hides underneath a tree, and the scars, you know, can't find her, and she evades them, and then she goes to go back to the theater, but she sees the hospital off in the distance, and she's like, you know what, fuck it. And she goes herself after Nora. And then we see Ellie crawling through the tall grass like in the game, and a dog barks at her, sensing her, which is also from the game, and she crawls into a building through a little hole, and she evades the dog and the wolf that was, you know, holding the leash, and the guy's like, it was just some critter. But this is 100% how you sneak around in the game. You sneak through tall grass, you sneak around the wolves, you sneak around the hospital, which is a setting in the game, and then you know, sneak into a hole in the building, which is always like the little details on how much they're making the game people be like, yeah, this does kind of feel like the game. Like, and even like the settings, like the way that they built the set feels so very close to the game's locations. We then see Nora has been taking care of the wounded at the hospital, and she's like emptying this blood bucket, and then Ellie comes in behind her, and we pretty much get the word for word sequence from the game. And you know, she's like, you remember me? Yeah, you remember me. And then Nora like taunts her and goes, yeah, that little bitch got what he deserved. I hear his screaming every night. And at first she's making it sound like she's sorry for her actions and what Abby did, and then she goes, yeah, that little bitch got what he deserved, and she throws like the blood bucket all over Ellie, and I was like, that is disgusting. But then they chase and she runs after her, and I was like, oh no, this is wild. And it's interesting because the chase and everything that happens in this sequence in the game versus the show is pretty much shot for shot the same thing. You know, like the argument they have, her telling that little bitch got what he deserves, throwing the thing at her, and then Ellie has to chase after her on foot. She's like shooting as she's running, and then Nora's like, shoot this girl, she's crazy, you know, and they're shooting at Ellie, and then, you know, they end up making it into this red light sequence where it will happen in a minute, where in the game it is wild that you have to control Ellie and do this, but it is crazy sequence, and I'm so glad that they didn't shy away from doing it in the game. This show's not really the shy away from hard shit type of show, you know what I mean? So, not from the game, we kind of fall down to the lower levels in the game. In the show, Nora runs and jumps onto an elevator, and the elevator falls, bringing her to the lower levels, and then Ellie, you know, runs after her and goes down to lower floors, and we see spores are in the air, and Ellie sees an infected in the wall, you know, breathing out spores. So like, we see this all the time in the game where there's like a infected in the wall, and you walk by it thinking nothing's going to happen, and then they pop out of the wall and grab you because they're still alive, just, you know, encased in like this infected chrysalis into the wall, which is just nuts. But we see the guy on the wall like breathing spores into the air, so this is implying how spores get into the air. It doesn't just, you know, happen from an infected body laying on the ground. It happens from these people that didn't get bit to be infected. They breathed in these spores, and now they're infected, and they're just creating more spores. Oh, wild. We also see another one of these infected that are one's sitting on the ground, one's in the wall breathing out spores. One of them's on the ground, and the one on the ground might be that Sergeant Park that we saw at the beginning of the episode. Her son might be the one that Ellie sees here, just on the ground, slowly dying, breathing out spores. Or as Craig Mazin put it, he's breathing in air and breathing out spores, which is just an even worse way to think about just how this guy slowly dies for the rest of his life. But as Ellie's looking and checking out these spore guys, she hears coughing and turns on the red light. In this sequence, in this scene from the game, is so oof. But Nora is not immune, and Ellie's got her cornered, and Nora thinks she killed them both, but then she finds out that Ellie's the immune girl, and she goes, "You're her, oh my god." And Ellie just wants to know where Abby is, and Nora's like, "Don't you know what he did?" And Ellie's like, "I don't care." And Nora breaks down exactly what Joel did, killing all the Fireflies in the hospital, and he killed the only doctor that could make a cure, you know what I mean? The only guy in the world that could make a cure. He shot in the head, and that was Abby's dad who he shot. And Ellie says, "I know." Oh, so Ellie knows this information? When did she find that out? Maybe we'll see in a flashback next episode. But Ellie says, "I don't care. Where's Abby?" And Nora won't give it to her, so she starts to beat it out of her with a pipe. And from the game, you know, as she's getting angry enough to hit her with the pipe, you know, when you're watching this cutscene, they actually make you hit the square button to make her hit Nora. So you're actually the one that they make control beat Nora to death, even though she's not Abby. You know what I mean? Like, and in the game, they don't make it perfectly clear that Nora was the one holding down Ellie. You know what I mean? So she's really in the game just killing Nora just to get this information on Abby, which is dark. But the way that the lighting looks in that scene looks so good, and I actually have the clips from those scenes too, and they, oh god, Tati Gabriel and Bella Ramsey really crushed it for this sequence.
Where's Abby? Oh. Where is she? No. Where is she? Where is she?
Oof. So Ellie's just beating her with this lead pipe, just saying, "Where is she?" And the red light. Oh god, I always love this scene from the game and how moody and dark it looks, and just Bella Ramsey's face. Oh god, she really looks like a dark, crazy Ellie right here. And Tati Gabriel, who we probably won't see again in Nora's death here, but Tati Gabriel we will see as the main person in Naughty Dog's next game, Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. So that's why she's got a bald head here for that, I'm pretty sure. But then we cut over to the final scene from this episode, which is a flashback and a tearjerker, leading us into the next episode, but I have the clip here.
Hey, kiddo.
Hi.
So after she cuts to black after beating Nora, Ellie wakes up with Sunny and birds chirping, and she's still living in Joel's house, and Joel walks in and says, "Hey kiddo," and they cut to black. And I was like, oh god. And she like rolls over, she's like, "Hi," and she smiles and she's all happy, and it's like, god, what happened in this 5 years from last season to this season, and how did they go from being bad to good to bad all over again? Like, what happened? So hopefully next episode we see the whole flashback and what happens, but the credits rolled to Present Tense by Pearl Jam, and so the start of next week will be the flashback of all 5 years of what happened to Ellie and Joel's relationship and what they went through. And I'm guessing that next week's episode ends with Ellie coming back to the theater with Abby's location, and she'll be covered in blood and her hand will be shaking from, you know, beating Nora. And that's just my guess, but the trailer looks like maybe the whole episode will be all flashback, and we'll maybe get that Eugene flashback next episode. But comment below your thoughts on episode 5. We got the flashback episode 6, and then the finale episode 7. So season 2 is coming to an end. I'd love to hear your thoughts so far. Which part of the season have you liked the most? What part of the games do you love? Do you not play the games? I'd love to hear these things down in the comment section below. I'd love to talk more Last of Us with you. You can follow my other social medias and send me a message over there and chat with me about The Last of Us, or you can support the channel. The best way to do that is by liking this video, commenting below. My battery died just at the end there as I was closing it up. Don't you hate when that happens? But just to close out this video, thank you guys so much for coming on by. My name's Big Cam. I don't remember where this is exactly cut out, so follow my other social medias, links down in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel, the best way to do that is by liking this video, commenting down below, subscribing if you're new, and hitting that bell so you don't miss next week's The Last of Us Season 2 breakdown. So thank you guys so much for coming on by. If you'd like to check out other videos on the channel, there's Andor Season 2 breakdowns right now. There's also Daredevil Born Again Season 1 breakdowns all on the channel. There's other Star Wars stuff. There's Last of Us Season 1 if you want to go way back and see my earliest stuff from like 2023. Very interesting show and amazing game, and I love Season 2 so far. The cast has been crushing it, and next week we might see that dinosaur moment with Ellie on top of a dinosaur and Joel and her at a museum. You know, like, I think next week, bring your tissues, because episode 6 is going to be a tearjerker, especially now that Joel's dead and we're getting this one last hurrah with Pedro Pascal as Joel, and it's going to be real sad. Real sad. Oh man, I think that next week's episode is going to fuck us all up. And then the finale, we don't know what's going to happen. You know, it could be entirely different from the game. We just don't know where the stopping point for season 2 is going to be, because they're not so far in that like everything that happens in season 2 is, or in part 2 of the game, is going to happen in these final 2 episodes. Like, it's just impossible. And we do know that they are confirmed for a season 3, and there isn't a part 3 of the game yet. Neil Druckmann, work with Haley and work with Craig Mazin. We all need a Last of Us Part 3. I think you need it too, but you don't want to put out a game without a fantastic story, and he's still trying to find that story. But I have faith. Neil Druckmann, Naughty Dog, I have faith. You guys make fantastic games. I will also be playing Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, for sure, so you guys don't worry about that. And my name is Big Cam. Once again, I've been dragging on now for a little bit because I got mad that my camera died, so I wanted to talk a little bit more. But thank you guys so much. My name is Big Cam. Follow the other social medias. Support the channel. Like, comment, subscribe. Do the things. Thank you guys so much. See you beautiful people in the next one. Peace.